Imagine a ship born not from glory, but from desperation. A machine forged in the shadows of economic collapse, destined to carve her name into the pages of naval legend. The year was 1936, and as America wrestled with the Great Depression, shipyard hammers at Brooklyn Navy Yard echoed with renewed purpose. From cold steel and human resolve, hull number 50 began to take shape, a vessel that would one day be called the machine gun cruiser. In those uncertain times, the United States Navy sought reinvention. Battleships ruled the seas, but whispers of faster, deadlier combat filled naval halls. The new St. Louis-class cruisers would embody that vision, sleek, fast, and armed to the teeth. USS Helena, 608 feet of precision engineering, was built not merely to sail, but to fight. Her slender hull, only 61 feet wide, sliced through the Atlantic like a blade, while deep below, the heartbeat of 4 Parsons turbines waited to unleash 100,000 horsepower. But Helena's true strength lay not in her engines. It was her guns. 15 6-inch Mark 16 rifles, arranged in 5 triple turrets, capable of firing up to 10 rounds per minute each. In perfect conditions, that meant 150 shells raining down on the enemy every 60 seconds. It was a symphony of steel, orchestrated by the finest gunners the Navy could train. Those who watched her test firings swore it sounded like ripping fabric, the furious chatter that would one day earn her the nickname machine gun cruiser. The men who built her could not have imagined the destiny she carried. Welders, riveters, and mechanics, most fresh from the unemployment lines, poured their sweat and hope into every seam of her hull. In a way, Helena was more than a ship. She was a symbol of recovery, a product of human endurance, and a nation's quiet determination to rise again. On a cold December day, she slid down the ways into the East River, her bow cutting through the water like a promise. The champagne bottle burst across her hull as the crowd cheered. They saw a warship. History would remember something more: a survivor, a fighter, and eventually, a legend that refused to die. December 7th, 1941. The morning that changed the world. In the stillness of Pearl Harbor, USS Helena rested quietly at berth 1010, her crew unaware that within minutes, the sky would tear open with the roar of war. Across the harbor, the battleships of the Pacific Fleet sat lined in perfect order, proud symbols of American might. But fate, as it often does, had its own plan. Helena's berth had been intended for the battleship Pennsylvania, the pride of the battle line. But a last-minute repair schedule placed Helena there instead, a decision that would save one ship and nearly doom another. At 7:57 a.m., Japanese torpedo bombers swept low over the harbor, sunlight flashing off their wings. Lieutenant Commander Shigeharu Maruta's formation approached what he believed was Pennsylvania. Through the haze of smoke and rising chaos, Helena's profile was close enough to be mistaken for a battleship. A single torpedo dropped, a slender, deadly streak cutting through the calm waters. It passed beneath the mine layer, Oglala, and struck Helena squarely at frame 75, just below the armor belt. The explosion was catastrophic. Steel buckled, bulkheads crumpled, and men were thrown from their posts. Boiler rooms flooded instantly. In seconds, the pride of Brooklyn's shipyard became a wounded giant. 40 sailors were dead. Over 100 lay injured. Yet amid the smoke and chaos, Helena refused to die. Within 2 minutes, her forward diesel generator roared to life, restoring power to the guns. Her anti-aircraft batteries swung skyward, spitting defiance at the Japanese planes that circled overhead. Shrapnel rained down, blood and oil mingled on her decks, but still she fought. When the Japanese pilots returned home, they reported her sunk. They were wrong. The ship they thought they'd destroyed had only just begun her war. When USS Helena limped into Mare Island Naval Shipyard in early 1942, she was more than damaged. She was scarred, but still breathing. Her crew had fought to keep her alive across 1,000 miles of open Pacific, patching holes, manning pumps, and praying the sea wouldn't claim her. To the workers who greeted her arrival, she looked like a ghost of steel, twisted plates, scorched decks, and the blackened wounds of Pearl Harbor still visible along her hull. But the Navy had no intention of letting her die. At Mare Island, Helena was reborn. Her repairs went far beyond fixing torpedo damage. She was transformed into a new kind of warship, one forged from lessons learned in blood. Gone was her enclosed bridge that restricted visibility. In its place, an open bridge gave her commanders a panoramic view of battle. The outdated 1.1-inch Chicago piano anti-aircraft guns were replaced by quadruple 40mm Bofors, sleek, deadly machines of Swedish design, perfected by American hands. But her greatest upgrade came not in armor or artillery, but in vision. Helena became one of the first cruisers equipped with the new SG surface search radar, a device that could pierce through fog, rain, and darkness to reveal enemies invisible to the naked eye. It was revolutionary, the kind of advantage that could turn survival into supremacy. Alongside this, new fire control radars, designated FC and FD, allowed her guns to track and strike targets even in total blackness. While her hull was being welded and wired, her crew trained relentlessly. Damage control teams drilled day and night. Gunners practiced until muscle memory replaced thought. The men knew they weren't just repairing a ship, they were forging a weapon. When she finally steamed out of Mare Island, Helena wasn't returning to war. She was returning for revenge. By October 1942, the South Pacific had become a crucible of fire. The struggle for Guadalcanal was reaching its breaking point, and every ship sent into those waters risked never coming home. Among them was USS Helena, repaired, refitted, and burning for payback. Under Rear Admiral Norman Scott, she joined Task Force 64, a tight formation of cruisers and destroyers trained for a new kind of battle, night warfare. The Japanese called it their domain, but Helena carried something they didn't: radar. On the night of October 11th, Helena's SG radar picked up faint echoes in the darkness. Enemy ships, 27,000 yards distant, closing fast. What followed was chaos turned to choreography. The Japanese force under Admiral Goto steamed toward Guadalcanal, unaware they were walking into an ambush. Admiral Scott, commanding from the USS San Francisco, tried to coordinate the attack, but confusion reigned. In the dark, voices crackled over the radio, hesitant and unsure. "Do we open fire?" came the question. The reply, "Roger," was mistaken for permission. At 11:46 p.m., Helena unleashed hell. Her 15 6-inch guns roared in synchronized fury, firing faster than anyone thought possible. Within seconds, her shells tore into the Japanese cruiser Aoba, killing Admiral Goto before he even realized who had struck him. Other cruisers followed her lead, their guns lighting the night like a storm of molten lightning. In just 14 minutes, Helena fired more than 400 rounds, her barrels glowing red, her decks littered with empty brass casings. When the smoke cleared, Japanese ships burned on the horizon. The Battle of Cape Esperance was over. America had won its first clear surface victory of the Pacific War. And in the eyes of her crew, Helena's nickname had become truth. She was the machine gun cruiser. November 1942. The waters around Guadalcanal were cursed, littered with burning wrecks and human debris from weeks of unrelenting combat. USS Helena, now a battle-hardened veteran, steamed once again into that nightmare. This time, she joined Rear Admiral Daniel Callahan's task force, ordered to intercept a powerful Japanese bombardment group heading toward Henderson Field. Among the enemy were two battleships, Hiei and Kirishima, giants of steel and fire. The coming battle would be fought in the dark, at distances so close, sailors could see the enemy's faces illuminated by gun flashes. Shortly after 1 a.m. on November 13th, Helena's radar painted contacts moving fast. The Japanese were upon them. Callahan's command ship, San Francisco, lacked radar, forcing Helena's crew to guide the fleet blind through chaos. Searchlights stabbed through the night. Muzzles flashed. In seconds, the peaceful Black Sea erupted into a storm of flame and thunder. Helena's gunners fired with mechanical precision, her radar-guided shells finding targets before most ships even knew where to aim. A Japanese destroyer, Akatsuki, made the fatal mistake of illuminating Helena with a searchlight. Every American ship that could bear opened fire. Helena's rapid salvos joined a wall of destruction that vaporized Akatsuki in a single massive explosion. Then she shifted her fury toward other enemy destroyers, her guns firing so fast that Japanese survivors later swore Americans had invented a new automatic cannon. The battle raged for 40 minutes. Confusion, heroism, tragedy. Friendly shells struck San Francisco, killing Admiral Callahan and Captain Cassin Yun, but the price was worth it. The Japanese battleship Hiei was crippled and finished off by American planes the next morning. When dawn broke over Iron Bottom Sound, Helena had survived again, bloodied, weary, but undefeated. She was no longer just a ship. She was vengeance made of steel. The victory at Guadalcanal came at a cost. For USS Helena and her crew, survival was no longer a matter of luck. It was endurance. The Solomon Islands became their world, a humid, disease-ridden cauldron where the line between combat and exhaustion blurred. Between night patrols and daily bombardments, men slept in shifts, ate when they could, and lived with the constant hum of battle stations in their ears. The enemy was never far. Japanese destroyers haunted the slot, and submarines prowled the depths. Every sunset carried the same unspoken question: would they live to see another dawn? Helena's days were a grind of repetition and readiness. At dawn, general quarters. At dusk, radar sweeps and gunnery drills. She bombarded jungle fortifications on Guadalcanal and New Georgia, her shells tearing through trees and bunkers alike. The heat was suffocating. Metal decks burned through boots. Sweat and oil became the ship's perfume. Yet even in the monotony of war, the crew clung to fragments of normal life. In the rare quiet moments, the ship came alive in different ways. The Helena hotshots, the ship's own swing band, played on deck, their trumpets and saxophones echoing across the dark water. Movie reels flickered against makeshift screens, laughter briefly replacing the rumble of engines. The ship's laundry somehow turned out pressed uniforms even after battle, and when the ice cream machine worked, it became the most valuable equipment aboard. Tropical diseases, boredom, and fear gnawed at everyone, but camaraderie kept them standing. The men of Helena became brothers, bound by salt, smoke, and shared defiance. Each repair, each shell loaded, each night survived carried an unspoken promise. They had come too far to fall now. The machine gun cruiser was still alive, and her war was far from over. By late 1942, the men of USS Helena had become a single organism, disciplined, fearless, and bonded by battle. But even the strongest crew can be shaken when leadership falters. Their beloved captain, Gilbert C. Hoover, had guided them through chaos at Cape Esperance and Guadalcanal. He was steady, composed, a man who led from the bridge and earned respect without demanding it. When the Navy relieved him of command in November, it hit like a torpedo amidships, his so-called offense, failing to file a detailed report on the sinking of USS Juneau, felt to his crew like bureaucratic betrayal. They had survived hell together, and now their skipper was gone. When Captain Charles P. Cecil took the helm in December 1942, the crew's loyalty had to be rebuilt from the deck up. Cecil was different, quiet, methodical, but with a steel edge beneath his calm demeanor. He understood that Helena's spirit was her greatest weapon, and he worked tirelessly to keep it alive. Discipline remained tight, but he knew when to ease the tension. Under his command, boxing matches returned to the forecastle, movie nights flickered under tropical stars, and laughter began to echo again through the steel corridors. Cecil was also a realist. He knew Helena's reputation made her a target. The machine gun cruiser was now famous across both navies. The men respected his caution and his precision. He reminded them that survival was victory in these waters, and that courage meant more than charging blindly into fire. As 1943 began, Helena was exhausted but unbroken, guided by a captain who understood her pulse and a crew who trusted him with their lives. Together they prepared for another campaign, unaware that their next battle would be their last and their most unforgettable. July 6, 1943. The night was bright, too bright. A full moon hung over Kula Gulf, turning the water to silver and stripping away the darkness that American ships usually depended on. USS Helena led her formation into the Gulf, her radar already scanning the horizon for movement. The men aboard could feel it, a tension in the air, the instinctive awareness that something deadly was coming. They had fought too many battles to mistake calm seas for safety. Admiral Walden Ainsworth's task force moved in column, ready to intercept a Japanese convoy bringing reinforcements to New Georgia. But the Japanese were ready too. Admiral Teruo Akiyama's destroyers bristled with long-lance torpedoes, fast, silent killers that could strike from beyond visual range. At 1:36 a.m., Helena's radar found them first. "Contacts bearing northwest," came the calm voice from the radar room. It was the same pattern they had seen before, only this time fate had reversed the roles. At 1007 the order came: commence firing. Helena's 15 6-inch guns erupted in thunder, their shells walking across the sea toward the enemy flagship, Nizuki. Within minutes the Japanese destroyer was burning, its bridge shattered. But in her fury, Helena made one fatal mistake. She fired using standard propellant after running out of flashless powder. Each salvo lit the night sky like a flare, marking her position perfectly for the Japanese torpedo crews. At 2003, the ocean struck back. 3 long-lance torpedoes tore into Helena's side in rapid succession. The first ripped her bow apart, the next 2 broke her keel, snapping her spine like glass. Power failed. Darkness swallowed her decks. Still, her aft turrets kept firing, their crews refusing to stop even as the ship split into 3. In that moment, Helena's legend was sealed. She fought until the sea took her guns. When the explosions ended, silence fell over Kula Gulf, broken only by the cries of men and the hiss of burning oil on the water. USS Helena was gone, broken into 3 pieces, her proud hull scattered across the sea she had ruled. Yet even in death, she refused surrender. Hundreds of sailors clung to floating debris, life rafts, and the remnants of her stern section, which miraculously stayed afloat. The moon that had betrayed them now illuminated a haunting scene. Men covered in oil, faces blackened by smoke, drifting in the wreckage of their ship. The destroyers Nicholas and Radford, ignoring orders to withdraw, turned back into danger. Their captains knew every minute counted. Japanese destroyers were still in the area, and daylight would bring air attacks. The rescuers lowered nets and ropes as gunners stood ready, firing at any enemy that appeared on radar. One by one, they hauled survivors aboard. Exhausted, wounded, barely conscious men who had fought the sea as fiercely as they had fought the enemy. By dawn, over 700 had been pulled from the water, but hundreds more still floated in small groups, praying they would not be left behind. When Admiral Ainsworth reluctantly ordered the rescue ships to retreat, the decision tore at every man's heart. Those left behind faced a living nightmare: blazing sun, open sea, and sharks drawn by blood. Lieutenant Commander John L. Chu, commanding survivors on the floating stern, organized the men with military discipline. They rationed food, tended to the wounded, and dove beneath twisted steel whenever Japanese planes strafed the wreck. Days later, Local islanders and coast watchers on Vela La Vela helped guide rescue teams back to them. On July the 16th, 10 days after the sinking, the last survivors were brought home. Against every odd, the men of Helena endured, proof that even when her hull was gone, her spirit refused to sink. For decades, the name USS Helena echoed quietly through the halls of naval memory, a story passed from sailor to sailor, told in the glow of wardroom lamps and veterans' reunions. She had fought harder, fired faster, and endured longer than any ship her size had the right to. Her 7 battle stars told one story, but the men who served aboard her carried another, a memory of brotherhood forged in steel and smoke. The Navy honored her with the first ever Navy Unit Commendation awarded to a ship. The citation mentioned 3 battles, Cape Esperance, Guadalcanal, and Kula Gulf, each a chapter in the legend of the machine gun cruiser. Her loss reshaped U.S. naval warfare. Commanders studied her reports, her damage control logs, her radar efficiency. The lessons written in her blood became doctrine, the importance of radar coordination, flashless powder, and relentless training under combat conditions. Helena's death had meaning. It saved countless others. For years she lay undiscovered beneath the waters of Kula Gulf, her final resting place unknown. Then, in April 2018, explorer Paul Allen's research vessel, RV Petrel, descended into the deep. At nearly 2,800 feet below, cameras illuminated a ghost of steel. There, resting on the seabed, was Helena's stern, her hull number 50 still visible, her turrets frozen mid-turn, as if ready to fire one last broadside. Coral clung to her rails, fish drifted through her silent passageways, but her posture remained proud, unyielding, as if defying time itself. To her surviving crew and their families, that discovery wasn't closure. It was confirmation. Confirmation that their ship had not been forgotten, that the machine gun cruiser still kept her final watch, deep in the Pacific, beneath the same moonlight that once betrayed her. USS Helena's story is not just about steel or gunfire. It's about the resilience of ordinary men asked to do impossible things, and their refusal to break. From the docks of Brooklyn to the depths of the Solomon Sea, she proved what courage truly means. She was built to survive, born to fight, and remembered as one of the finest ships that ever sailed. If this story moved you, let us know. Share your thoughts below. Salute these forgotten heroes with your comments, and help keep their memory alive. Like, share, and subscribe for more untold stories of courage, sacrifice, and history that refuses to fade.